lovely Anon.
I know, right? I especially love how she disses Craig.
How can we assume that the Anon is a she, though?
I just said or he.
Oh, fair.
Or he.
Or he.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a cute, like, Bishonen boy standing behind a tree, like, glaring at you.
Can we commission fan art for that? Just, like,
Yeah.
Soon fanboy Anon looking at Craig with cherry blossoms.
No, I don't like this. I don't like this hell. No.
If you want to help fund this piece of fan art, you can contribute at Patreon.
The shameless plugging constantly, guys.
God fucking bless.
きっと約束だよいつかまた同じ笑顔で
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the box. Which box, you may ask? Why, the one and only Annie Chat box. This is episode 65, and my name is Cammie, and I am here. I had such a just rough day today, and I am so happy to be in my happy place with my favorite weeb besties, just weebing out about anime. I am so ready to be here. And those weeb besties include, all the way over on the Pacific Northwest, my dearest and our darling producer, Cassie.
Hello, 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 hello!
And of course, right next door, he extracted his cat out of his closet with incredible strength. There is Craig.
Hello. How's it going, Internet? Good, I hope. Yes. Perfect cell!
Yes. And of course, joining us from so far away on a crazy time zone, bless his heart for staying up so late, there is Jonathan Joestar!
Hello, and I am actually not staying up late, I am actually up early, because my work schedule is crazy, so this actually works out for me fine.
Sometimes I'm just like, where's the crossover though? Because like 5 a.m. can be late, but it could also be early, depending on when you go to sleep.
It's true. Very
What
true.
is sleep?
For real though. Oh my gosh. So if you are also listening to us at a crazy time because you're an insomniac, why don't you also spend some of that time checking out our social links? Find us at twitter.com/theanniechatbox. Email us your late night thoughts, as long as they are safe for work to read on air, at anniechatmail@gmail.com. And take a listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud. And if you find it within your heart of hearts, especially late at night when you get those urges to just spend money, you should check out our Patreon at patreon.com/AnnieChatbox. Whoo boy, that was a doozy. Sometimes I just like go with these improv lines and I'm like, this is falling apart, but we just barrel through. That's what we do.
I liked it. Like, I hosted Saber Progress just yesterday night to break the illusion, and I was like, oh man, I try to be funny with my improv intros, like, and I try to come up with titles for people, but sometimes I'm like, I can't think of anything creative. Crap!
Yep. You just do your best. We all do our best here on the Annie Chat box.
Only our very best.
Our very, very best.
Only our Rue bestie.
I love it.
Gamba Ruby, right? That's something she says.
Gamba Ruby.
Gamba Ruby.
Oh, that's cute.
And for those that have noticed that we do our Rue Bestie, they have sent us a couple emails. So today, for our main topic, we're just going to give you a quick email catch-up sort of deal. So we're going to go through rotating, and we each have a couple mails to read. I think I have 2, and then each other host has 1. So I'm going to start us off and close us out with some emails. So the first one that I have comes from an anonymous viewer, and it is titled, Craig Needs to Try Harder. And it says his announcements suck and he needs to put more effort into it, says an Anon. Well,
I greatly apologize, Annan. I've been getting better. Admittedly, while my announcements have been trying to get a little bit better, I have kind of slacked on the social media front because I spaced on tweeting last week's episode. I gotta do that.
But Craig tweets plenty about Bang Dream.
Oh!
Too much gotcha hell.
Ooh.
Too much gotcha hell. We can't get into this.
And in calling out your addiction without even like knowing exactly what you're up to. That's pretty deep, man.
Craig has this bad habit recently of introducing me to things and then they poison my life. Like, for example, Hugto Precure.
Yay.
My life revolves around that show now. Then he's like, hey Cassie, have you seen this new gacha game that I'm interested in? Sure. I think I've logged more hours into it than he has at this point.
Yeah, she's hopelessly addicted, albeit with Precure. I mean, that didn't take much. I think you can also thank Suki and your boyfriend for that. I didn't start anything with that one.
I only really knew it existed because you mentioned it and then they both were like talking about it. So you mentioned it first.
Oh yeah, because I was watching Smile before you even gave a crap about it. You're like, oh, did they punch things? And they're color coordinated.
Yeah, and I remember you saying, Cassie, there's gonna be babies in this one. And I was like, what? There's gonna be babies. I'm excited. And collectively, the entire Precure fandom went, and I went, ee!
Yeah. Hugcon was very divisive, and it's okay.
But we're not here to talk about Hugto Precure, though. We're here to talk about Craig's
No.
addiction.
The thing with both Bang Dream and Hugto Precure is that after she got dragged in with him, she grabbed me and dragged me along with her.
Of course, John. Everywhere I go, you must go. He's also being dragged slowly through Danganronpa hell as well. Like, that's
that too.
So Craig, I mean, here's how we fix this scenario.
Okay.
If the Anon is asking you to put more effort into your announcements, relate those announcements to the current things that are controlling your life. Be like, look, if you want to help me fund my terrible addiction to get lolly idol PNGs, then check out our Patreon at patreon.com/AnnieChatbox.
Yeah, just shamelessly plug everything that could like fund me or any sort of sense. Any sense of that nature, be like, hey, you could also check out our streams. We do those occasionally. Craig and myself.
Live Bang Dream Rooms. Yes.
Oh god,
That sounds
please,
terrible.
No. I refuse. I'm putting my foot down.
Oh noes. Oh noes. But Craig, I want you to know that we all believe in you.
Thank you.
And we love you. And we know that you are doing your Rubestie.
Thank you.
And since you are doing your Rubestie, how about you go ahead and read us the email that you received?
Yeah, I like it. So this one is by an anonymous fan / anonymous writer. It says, the subject line goes as such: nice new icon. I know you haven't formally announced it. This is obviously dated back on the 12th. So, I know you haven't formally announced it, but your new icon is already on Google and the Discord, and it's very kawaii desu, and I love you all, and you're doing a great job, so please keep up the great work. Right, correction,
Aww.
Good work, but great works as well. Also, Cami is really cute, and I like her a lot, and she has really good taste in magical girl anime. And everyone should check out John's unboxings, because they're fun. Also, Craig is okay, I guess. Wow, rude, Anon.
I feel like this Anon does not like you, if it's the same Anon.
I feel like this Anon is just very soon for you. Like 3 soons. Soon
Too
for
soon
you.
to function.
Soon.
And finally, it closes out by saying, and Cassie is my everything. K, thanks,
Aw.
bye.
Aw,
What a lovely Anon.
I know, right? I especially love how she disses Craig.
How can we
Or
assume
he.
that the Anon is a she, though?
I just said or he.
Oh, fair.
Or he.
Or he.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe you have a cute, like, Bishonen boy standing behind a tree, like, glaring at you.
Ah! Can we commission fan art for that? Just like
Yeah.
the sued fanboy Anon looking at Craig with cherry blossoms.
No, I don't like this. I don't like this hell. No.
If you want to help fund this piece of fan art, you can contribute at Patreon.
The shameless plugging constantly, guys.
God fucking bless. Have I mentioned I love mailbag episodes or mail episodes? Please send more mail to us. This is fun.
The Anon will. That's the problem. They will.
They will. But I think for Craig's own self-comfort, John, how about you read us what you've got?
Alright, this email, also from an anonymous user,
Damn.
was obviously to our, in response to our, Thunderbolt Fantasy episode.
Okay.
Because we had 2 extra guest hosts that episode.
Yes.
Because this one is titled, Dom is a Weeb.
Mhm.
Oh, call outs.
And, the content says, that's all, fucking weeb. Also, Zach is precious. And the rest of you kids are pretty okay too.
That's good. That's really good.
So Cassie, do you have any opinions on this specific email?
I believe that this Anon is very correct.
Yeah.
And that my beautiful, lovely, sweet significant other is in a state of denial. And it's okay. It's part of the, 18 million stages of grief of being an anime fan. So that's
18 million.
That's a lot of stages.
we go through a lot of stages of grief, guys.
Which number stage is he on within 18 million?
I don't know. You'd have to ask
2.
him. He won't admit to being a weeb.
You see, I always associated him and Zach in the same vein as the hipster weeb, where they're like, oh, we're so self-aware of the fandom, but we choose to watch the highest quality art. Pinky out, y'all.
Okay, he's not that bad. Zach is, though. 150%. Like Dominic will at least sit down and watch Darling in the Franxx with me and pretend like he's having a good time. Like,
You're right, Zach just doesn't give a shit about things that bore him. He's like, I'm gonna rewatch the 90s until it's cool again. Yeah.
I'm gonna watch things from the 90s until I believe that life is okay.
Oh. I don't even know how I'd classify Get as a weeb, because at this point he doesn't watch things on his own. It's only if people are like, hey, this is good, and then he's like, I should check it out, or aka I drag him to things. And then sometimes he'll watch things that I don't stick with. Right now Megalobox is so much his shit that he's just like, I'm gonna watch this on my own every week. And he wants to watch it on his own, but then he'll just sit there and watch all the shit that I want to watch. So he's like a passive weeb.
Actually, here's a fun question for everybody here, because not everybody here currently has significant others, so let's just put this as a what-if scenario. So, if you had somebody you were dating, would you prefer them to also be into, anime and super weeby, or would you prefer them to be, or would you prefer to not share that with them? I know that sounds like a weird question, but I know some people actually like to keep their,
hobbies to themselves.
Their hobbies to themselves.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I guess for me, I would find that it'd be harder to kind of connect with them in the sense where it's just I'm an introvert by nature, so it's well, I do a podcast about video games. I also do a podcast about anime, and these are my things. I read, but I'm awful at it. I read comics, but I'm awful at that as well. So it's just well, if you don't really like it, or if you accept it, that's cool, but I would like to share this with you to an extent, and that'd be cool if you were to, quote, humor me, or you were into it as well.
Both of my exes have been in the fandom, though admittedly the first we didn't exactly watch stuff together. There was still stuff that we both enjoyed, that we could chat about and discuss, like Kingdom Hearts and stuff. So we having similar interests is definitely something I would appreciate in that regard. So I just find it easier to. I mean, maybe I should branch out into other areas, and if they do have things that like haven't got any interest, I would pay a bit more attention to that and give it a try. But like having somewhere, I think if somewhere, a middle ground to meetings. Like if their reaction to my anime watching is, "Ew, why do you do that? That's gross," and like this isn't gonna last.
Yeah. Accept me for the filthy anime trash that I am.
Yeah, there's a matter there about like at least having bottom line acceptance. But I think that kind of a happy middle ground makes a lot of sense. I remember one time I went on a date with a guy and I mentioned some of my interests and enthusiasm in anime, and I remember being laughed at like a little bit, like a side laugh at, and I was like, this isn't gonna go anywhere. All right, see ya.
Oh dear.
See ya.
What a good way to not score with Cammy.
Damn.
All right.
You're
Except
into that
you dumb-
weep shit. Ha 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 ha. Okay.
Did your...
But what about?
Go ahead. I had another question, but you go first.
I was going to ask you because I know you've been in a situation where you've had a significant other that isn't into anime. Like, you've been there before, right? And I mean, have you ended up happier being with people that share the interest of it with you?
Yeah, it's weird because, like, I feel like for me, there is that other part of me that has, like, hobbies outside of anime, especially back then when I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have that kind of stuff going on. So I was able to look into other hobbies that they were also into, like movies and, video games and stuff like that. And in some ways they were willing to watch some anime with me, but that was my thing. But to be honest, like at this point in my life, anime is just such a big part of it. Like, doing this podcast, watching stuff for the podcast, making AMVs, which Cammy knows all about. Just talking to people, being involved in communities, it would be really hard for me at this point to, I don't know, to date somebody or be with somebody romantically who couldn't at least accept or want to be mildly involved because it takes up so much of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like a deal breaker, but I feel like I'm happier when I can share this hobby because it's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though, I do have a question for everybody that might be fun.
How
did your guys' parents react to you being, like, an anime fan? Because my mom was just fucking vicious. And the only reason I thought about it was because of your date. Because I remember there was one time, I've only ever brought one boy home. Or one significant other home who happened to be male. I'm into everybody. Anyway. But I brought this boy home. And the first thing my mom said when I walked him through the door was, "Are you into this anime bullshit too?" And he just kind of looked at me and looked at my mom and was like, "Yeah?
Yes, I am."
And it was just very awkward for one, but also it's just like there was always this thing with my mother, especially. And she's gotten better with it throughout the years, especially towards the end of my college career and also now where she's like, "Oh, okay, like it's your hobby. Whatever." But when I was growing up and up until my early years of college, like she always just kind of shrugged it off as, "Oh, this is childish and you'll grow out of it."
That's unfortunate.
It was always either childish or pornographic. That's what anime was to my mother.
All the hentai.
We talked about that on the podcast too, just like people's stipulations, and it always is either it's that end of being too young and childish or too explicit.
It's always one of those two extremes and never in the middle unless you're actually in the fandom for some reason.
To answer your question, Cass, my mother and stepfather reacted much the same they did with video games. They're too old to understand the differences and subtle nuances between what is an anime and what isn't a cartoon. So they said, "Oh, you're just watching cartoons?" And I'm like, "Yep. I'm in my 20s and I'm still watching Cartoon Network and I'm watching Adult Swim. I'm watching Inuyasha and Dragon Ball Z and they're punching each other and Iron Reaver Soul Stealer, Richard Ian Cox, I believe his name was, yelled at constantly, but my mom's like, okay, you do you. Again, much like video games, my mom always assumed at a certain point, she's just like, I can't keep up with it, so it's all blurring together. You playing your Game Boy? Mom, it's a Nintendo DS. Game Boy. Right.
What about you, John?
My mother has always been of a sort of whatever is keeping him happy, and not my place to say anything about it, really, kind of stance on it. It's more one of my sisters that was always like, you should grow out of this. You should grow up and be mature and stop watching cartoons, kind of attitude. My father has often bought me Gundam kits for birthday and Christmas presents, so but my dad is also a Trekkie and a bit of a geek himself, so he was always I had more in common with my dad. But my mother's always just had a stance of it's something keeping me happy, so what's her place to... It's keeping me happy, keeping me out of trouble, so, and it's my own money I'm spending on model kits, so...
Yeah.
And fandom stuff, so what is it anyone else's place to say anything about it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Nice. Yeah. My parents, I think generally they treated it as something that was like, they might not have understood it themselves, but they respected, she likes it. And as I grew up and kind of just started finding ways to be active with anime, when I was 13, I went on eBay and ordered Sailor Moon VHS tapes, and at one point when I was a kid, my mom sewed, and I said, hey, can I be like Sailor Moon for Halloween? Could you make me that? And then I started drawing very terrible fan art when I was in middle school, and my mom, the one she was proud of, she'd put up in the kitchen, on the cabinet or something, where we displayed art. So I think that they thankfully, when they realized, they're like, okay, well, we're kind of in for the long haul, they were very supportive. And I mean, my dad, I think it's while he doesn't get it, there was no way that he would have been closed off to it, because I grew up coming home from school and he was like, hey, Camille, they've been re-airing this show Thundercats and I want you to watch it. Come on downstairs and watch Thundercats. And I'm talking the straight up 80s, 90s Thundercats.
Nice.
And Justice League and all that stuff. So they just never really seeked it out or necessarily got it, but I never did get a form of rejection in a way. And I think that's really unfortunate that is something that you had to grow up with, Cassie.
Yeah. I mean, it sucked with my sister rejecting it so flat out. So,
but now we've got we're your weeb family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my mom's gotten better too. She's not super mean about it now, but
that's good.
It took some time. I think one of my favorite things that ever happened was that she told me, what's the point of you sitting around fiddling with, clips and these anime clips for AMVs? Mm-hmm. And then a few years ago, I entered an AMV contest, and I won, a $20 gift card or something. And I called her, and I was like, hey, Mom, AMVs just brought me groceries. and it was a beautiful moment.
That's amazing. That is so good. Speaking of things that are also good, you have a cool email for us to read, right?
I do. I have the coolest of emails, and for once, it's not from an anonymous viewer.
What?
I know. We actually got an email that was, for once, not from our dedicated anonymous viewer fan. Who would have thought it? It's from, I'm just going to say the first name. I don't know if he wants his full name out there, but it's from a gentleman from the rival video game podcast, Paul.
Rival video game podcast.
Yes, completely. And he said if, I'm sorry, the title of the email is Winner Winner Chicken Dinner. And the actual email states as such: if any chat box or ACB had to participate in a Danganronpa-esque killing game, who would win? So I feel like he has not played the Danganronpa games because there isn't necessarily one winner. Typically people either become victims, murderers, or survivors, or are, the mastermind of the entire thing. So I thought it might be fun to take this and move it around and put everybody on a very brief pedestal and say, each of us say what we think would happen to them. So to start, let's put Cammy on the pedestal.
Oh, God. Well, quick, it's short and easy. I was talking to Get about this on our road trip back from Atlanta, and I was just like, I would die inevitably. I'm a person that is very easily manipulated because I wear the heart on my sleeve, and I put a lot of trust into what people say. Oh, I especially learned I'm easily manipulated after working with preschoolers. So I think one of two things would happen to me, how I would die. So I would either die within like the midst of somebody's plan. They needed somebody to kill. They could easily kill me, or I would be executed as as someone who was guilty, but it would be in a way where basically for whatever reason I was backed into or like manipulated into being like framing myself as the murderer, and then get guilty and die. I don't see any other way. These are why I like to watch people play the games but not play myself, because I'm just like I'm not smart enough for these things.
Oh, girl, yes you are.
What? Thank you.
Do we all agree with this though? Does everybody think that Cammy would be a victim? She's on her pedestal. What do we think?
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't think she has it within. She's not dead inside enough to be the mastermind. Nor is she not. She doesn't have. I would say I don't think you've ever played poker, Cammy. I don't want to assume, but I don't think you would straight ice a person and then get away scot-free with it.
Nope. That's a skill I've yet to hone.
Yeah, unfortunate.
You see, I'm kind of on the fence because I think that you may be a victim because of those reasons, or you definitely would not kill somebody on purpose. So you wouldn't be a killer on purpose. If you ended up being a killer or something, it would be because somebody manipulated you. But I also think that there is a small chance of you surviving.
I appreciate that.
Well, I also think that like a lot of people in a group would rely on you as, because you tend to, whether you realize it or not, when you're in a chaotic situation, even if you yourself are freaking out, you do have moments where you will sit yourself down and say, okay, what do I need to do to get through this?
Thanks.
And so I feel like a lot of people would rely on that and use that. Now, if you were in a situation where you would possibly die, I don't know if you would still be able to do that.
Life or death, go!
But I like to think that might be something after you adapted, a lot of people probably would see you as somebody they'd want to keep alive.
Yeah.
There's like emotional support and like a pillar of light.
I appreciate that.
Either as emotional support, or you're not crazy enough or annoying enough to have a target on your back. Not that always happens in the games. Actually, a lot of the nicer and innocent people do end up getting killed, or end up being murderers. Yeah. But I think it's going to be one between one or the other.
I appreciate that. I love you a whole lot. Just hope you know that.
So, John, let's put him on the pedestal.
Yes.
What do you think? Do you think you'd be the mastermind behind it all? Do you think you'd be a victim? Do you think?
The thing is, me and my friends back in school, we tended to go see various different movies, and the general consensus quite often was, because we'd end up talking about, like, who was each of us in this movie, and which one was it? The general consensus constantly was, I was always the guy that died before anything started happening. Like,
by accident.
This one movie called Dog Soldiers, where they were being targeted by werewolves, there's this one guy that, like, freaks out at the start, runs off and impales himself on a tree. And we all agreed, yes, I was the guy that ran off and impaled himself in the tree.
So, John, you're telling me that you would actually fit much better in another scenario, like in the anime Another.
Yeah, that sounds
You see,
about right.
So many opportunities to be impaled.
See, from this, all I have learned from John is not only would be he be a victim, he'd be the first victim.
Yeah.
He'd be the chapter 1 murder case.
Yes, I will likely, through some circumstances or another, I would be the chapter 1 victim.
I wouldn't even say, like, the way you're framing it, dude, is, like, you wouldn't even be chapter 1. You'd be, like, prologue. You'd be like, oh, man.
Nobody ever dies in the prologue of it.
Fuck, well, then that rules out that thing. Also, good reference on the movie with the guy impaling himself. I think I recall that movie.
Now, there has been a situation where somebody has died in a Danganronpa game and they didn't get a trial right away.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe that would happen to John, but that would mean he'd have to violate the rules, and John would not violate the rules.
I can see that.
John's
Didn't
not
someone die in the prologue in the first movie? Yeah, first Danganronpa, rather?
No. Nobody died in the prologue. Somebody died in chapter 1 and didn't get a trial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
okay,
that
that's
was,
that's what I was thinking of.
I just couldn't
But,
tell what the difference was.
But, okay. Can I make a stance here, though?
Yeah.
John would be a situation like a certain character from season 1, where even if he died off early, there would be a robot and or computer AI of him.
Oh, that'd be
resurrected
great.
for the rest of the game.
Mm.
And he would be the information tool and could provide, like, accuracy checks. I totally see that happening.
That'd be great. Good. I like it. Craig?
Yeah.
I think we all just agreed that you'd be a victim, John. I don't even think we...
yeah, you're gonna die. You're totally gonna die.
You're too sweet. You're too much of a cinnamon bun. Cinnamon buns don't last long in
No, they
Danganronpa.
don't.
You're gonna fucking die.
So, for mine, first and foremost, the way I interpret when I heard you read out loud Paul's message, and with the subject line "Winner, winner, chicken dinner" implies a PUBG sort of aspect to this. I think Paul is thinking Danganronpa is essentially only one person can get out of this alive, a la Saw, or actually I can't say
Battle
the Zero
Royale.
Escape games. Yeah, Battle
Yeah.
Royale. That being said, in the framing, mastermind killer or killed, I'd probably be killed maybe in chapter 2. I'd say I would probably not be cool enough to be killed right away, but after a while I would probably get killed because I'm just there. Would I add anything to the cast? Probably not. I'm kind of like the wallflower. I'm not really a good detective, or I don't know how to necessarily, like, I've never been to, like, a jury. I've never been a part of a jury or seen a trial, so I'm like, yeah, someone would probably out me after a while because I wouldn't offer them nothing.
Craig, I think because you're such a good bro to people that, like, nobody would see any, like, threat from you enough to kill you, or they would want to keep you around because you are a good bro. Like, that's the way I see
Then
it.
again, bros don't necessarily last very long.
No, I guess I'm thinking of a very specific one, but I won't diverge into details. There's a very specific bro that in Danganronpa that I, like, headcanon Craig as.
But we'll have to talk about that later. But I definitely, out of everybody here, if somebody's gonna survive in, like, a Danganronpa-esque game, I think it's gonna be Craig.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. You just seem like the type who would be, like, one of the last people left.
I just don't think I'd, like, I don't know. When you think about it in the confines of the trials, it's just like, everyone's like, oh, look at this, and this, and this. And I'm like, what happened again? I'm essentially the mage girl from Danganronpa B3, where I'm just like, yeah, I'm here. What did I... Magic.
But, well, some of the people that have survived all the way to the end have not necessarily been the most
Yeah.
Mm,
biggest
interesting.
contributors to the trials or whatever. But they have been, like, they have been like a moral support kind of character that's
Yeah, I can see it.
like they're just being like helping everyone out.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Like doing the best that they can, but of not necessarily being the brains of everything.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, now the time has come.
Yeah, and the entrance
and Cassie
of time
is on the pedestal.
I am on this pedestal. Before I talk, I do want to say if it was like a PUBG situation or like a what is it called? The Hunger
Saw.
Games situation or
Yeah.
Saw. I'm gonna say that if all four of us were put in a room or a situation, it was only the four of us and only one person was gonna survive, John's gonna win. And I'll tell you why. Because all of us just agreed that he would be a victim and we didn't even bat an eye. Because he's too much of a cinnamon roll, and that's always the person who snaps first and kills everyone.
Oh no.
John would win.
So it's in a situation where, actually, no, even Saw. Yeah, Saw. It's the famous room where you have to cut off your own foot in order to like get the key or whatever. Yeah, I think all of us would probably freak out, but John would probably be like, "So long, suckers!"
Shit, watch the world burn.
Yes.
That's just my thought. But if it was a Danganronpa thing, I think that I would probably
Be the
Mastermind.
I would not be the master. Oh my god. I love that everybody thinks that I'm just a psycho fucking killer behind the scenes. Like, when I'm off with, pretending to talk to my boyfriend, I'm just actually a serial killer just going around and stealing people's Lucky Charms. Like,
Psycho killer. Ba, ba, ba.
I don't think that you are a psychopath killer right now. I think that in a situation where you would feel the need to be, you have the capability to untap that part of yourself. That is what I am saying. It's like a superpower.
Suki keeps saying that eventually one day you're gonna snap and I'm gonna be the first to go, and then I just keep saying, I spread my arms wide open. Take me
in
now.
the arms of the angel.
Good luck with the steak knives. They're not that very sharp, but they could probably still do damage.
Oh, honey.
That being said, if you chose not to unlock that super secret special superpower part of you, I think that you would survive with your cunning and smarts and your kind and good nature.
Cassie hasn't actually said herself, though. We all just interrupted her.
That's true. Sorry, go
Oh,
for
no,
it.
you're
Go
fine.
on.
I think that I think I'm in a very similar situation to Cammy, where it's kind of 50-50. If I wasn't fucking out of my mind, that, or just very obsessed with the idea of my friends slaughtering each other. Yes, I often have fantasies about everybody murdering each other. You got me. I probably would either, I wouldn't kill somebody on purpose, but if I did, it would be because it would be an accident or suicide or something like that. But I don't think...
trick manipulated you into doing it.
Yeah, something like
some
that.
way,
But
yeah.
otherwise, I'm probably gonna die too. I'm way too easy to manipulate. But it's 50-50, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I might say on this email is, can we all agree that undoubtedly who would kill someone, or who would definitely end up being the mastermind, is our dear friend Suki.
Oh,
who I know is
totally.
listening right
150%. Like, out of everybody, if it wasn't me, I guess, it would be Suki. Suki.
You guess.
now. Yeah.
Suki, yeah, because everybody assumes that I'm a fucking psychopath, but it would be Suki sitting on her throne.
Oh my god, just
Just-
like in Pop Star.
Yeah,
Okay.
sitting on her throne watching everybody murder each other and just whispering softly, "Do your real bestie." That would be Suki.
Oh yes.
Now I'm just picturing this, and everyone will be pointing fingers at Cassie, like, she's the mastermind, but Suki will just be there and like, yes.
The true final boss.
Yes. That's what years of this has been. It's just been Suki setting up for me to be the fall guy, and I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah, again, to the parallels with, like, Saw or whatever, she's the Jigsaw, and her little mascot, little thing on the tricycle is probably just, like, a plushie of, like, Gamba Ruby, and it just says, "Do your real bestie."
So quickly, Craig, John, do you think I would die or live? Because we probably should get to the last email into our review.
You're gonna die.
Okay, thanks. John, what do you think? Good to know.
No quandary for him.
I think he'll survive.
Okay, cool. At least 2 people think I would live.
Even-ended. Nice. Okay, so that was a super fun topic. Thank you, Paul, for that. Thank you so much. I've got one more email to close us out, which is from an anonymous viewer, and it is titled, Requesting the Best Boys and Girls. Tell me about their best boys and girls. Oh, so she's saying we're the best boys and girls, and we need to tell her about our best boys and girls. So it says, hello. I say hello with a W because this is as low as I can be. Writing into a Weebcast email like this is my hell. So, hello. Long-time listener, first-time writer. Take me, or not take me.
Take me
Tell
now.
me all...
Take me now.
Down to the pits of weeb hell. Yes. Tell me, almighty weebs, whom I love very dearly, as an anonymous viewer who doesn't know you but loves you all incredibly because you are all a blessing in my life. Like if I knew you at all, which I don't. But, like, tell me, who are your top 5 best boys and best girls? What is the common trait with them, and why are you all such disgusting sinners who thirst for 2D characters? Blue heart, green heart, yellow heart, pink heart, purple heart. Anonymous viewer.
I'm not a sinner, anonymous writer. I will have you know I am a pure angel, much like the pollen, snow in winter.
Yeah, not happening.
So that actually is going to be a topic that we will tease out in one of our upcoming episodes. Absolutely, where we will all dish it out, our best boys and best girls, be they best or worst, because I have some best boys that are actually worst boys.
The problematic children.
Oh,
You'll have to wait and see.
so many babies' first problematic faves. So many.
Yes. Yes. So everybody should stay tuned for that. Thank you to all anonymous emailers and Paul for giving us something to talk about for this episode as our main topic. But with that said, we're going to slink on over into our review section this week, and we are going to be reviewing the anime Houseki no Kuni, or in English, Land of the Lustrous. So, Land of the Lustrous, I think I just like that, saying it that way better because alliteration, so I'll be doing that, is done by Studio Orange. When I looked up Studio Orange, it noted that they primarily assist with CG incorporation onto various series. So if you haven't seen anything of it yet, Land of the Lustrous is a fully CG animated show. But they have also done some CG assists on series such as Tiger and Bunny, Under the Dog, and Knights and Magic, which John and I watched a little while back. And I think it did have good CG. Actually.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Had some pretty nice.
The CG was alright in Knights and Magic.
Yeah. That was a good thing about it. So let's see. Land of the Lustrous is set in the far future, in which a land inhabited by an immortal life form called the Lustrous are the embodiment of gemstones. The 28 Lustrous are led by their teacher, Kongo Sensei, and fight to defend themselves against the Lunarians, who appear every few days, seeking to harvest the Lustrous' bodies for decorations. I'm going to murder this, so correct me if you need be. Phospholite,
You're good.
nicknamed Phos, is at 300 years old the youngest of the Lustrous, and is, because of their bitterness, unable to fight. They feel useless, but are given the task to assemble a natural history by Kongo Sensei. While looking for information to include in the book, Phos meets the Night Watch, Cinnabar, who is poisonous and thus dangerous to even other Lustrous. She lives in isolation. Finding this sad, Phos decides to find Cinnabar a better job. Okay, so that is honestly a good just backdrop on the entire show, but also specifically where we have our jumping off point from episode 1.
Yep.
I think we would say. And so we can divulge first in story. I will just say, after reading that synopsis, I realize how much this story travels, because goddamn, a
lot of shit happens.
A lot of stuff happens. A lot more than is necessarily said right there.
I feel like that's an episode 1 synopsis.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it more or less is just what happens in episode 1. Also, I think you said you read it as bitterness and his brittleness.
Oh, brittleness, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, because that is an important aspect of
Yeah,
it.
they're like density.
Foss is not bitter.
Girl is the only thing strong about her is her head. She's very headstrong, and that's about it.
It's true.
I mean, I guess that's very true. If I was to, it's even really hard for me to piece together like a synopsis that's more across the story. I would say story-wise, this is, for all intents and purposes, a large character arc for our main character Fuss, and what they go through and how they adapt to their world and how they grow because of it.
Basically, you put it beautifully. I said this wasn't like one of my favorite animes of 2017, and watching it, I was like, first and foremost, it does have problems. We're gonna talk about them. But I just liked, as you said, it's a character arc, a character story, 12 episodes dedicated to Foss and how all the other gems essentially influence her in one way or another, and to varying degrees, how they're influenced by her and vice versa.
That's true.
There are characters that are there alongside Foss for pretty much the entire series, and there are some that are just like there for an episode every so often, or like only once in the entire series.
Yeah. It seems to be exploring the world and exploring the characters in it, which is the Lustrous, like this community. I think that's something that on retrospect, now that I see it, I almost want to give this show a rewatch, because I think something that made it tough for me to get through is I was looking for like the through line plot. And just again, with the way that this story jumps around quite a bit, I would get a bit confused myself, just trying to keep track of the relevance of everything to each other, basically. How does this little storyline connect to this and this and this, and what does it reach towards?
You mean like with the world building and shit like that, right?
Well, yeah. There are just a lot of things that happen. Like you said, a lot of characters that are very much in the focal point for an episode or 2 or 3, and then they're kind of gone.
Yep.
So, I mean, am I the only one that had, at least at the time when you watched it, was that a little jarring for you, not really knowing where the plot was, or did you find it to be pretty cohesive?
Honestly, like, I almost feel like you were calling to me.
I was. Oh my dear, I was.
Oh yes, truly.
Oh my.
Lock eyes from across the room. Anyway, so if there is one thing that, I'm not gonna say ruined the show for me, but like just completely like destroyed my enjoyment of it, it was the fact that I have no idea. Like, if somebody came up to me, and that's just the thing, like, I almost can't fault whatever you were sourcing as the synopsis for basically just explaining episode 1, because I watched the entire show, and if you came up to me then and said, Cassie, when I finished the show, what is this show about? I would say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Gym butts.
And if you were to come up to me now, after having a few months to, let it marinate and think about it, and said, Cassie, what's this show about? I would say, I don't know. Like, I don't know what this show is about, and that really frustrates me as somebody who mostly watches anime for story, or at least to build something interesting. They meander around so many different things that they never fully explain. There are plot points that are dropped as soon as episode 3 and are never ever talked about again. There are so many things in this show that are presented to you. Sometimes it's a little slug on a platter for you to love and digest, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And that was very frustrating for me, and maybe a rewatch would help, but I don't know if it would, in my case at least, because my problem is that, and we'll get to how pretty the show is, and how good the characters that do get focus are, but I felt like almost everything in the show was disposable.
Ooh, interesting word choice there.
Like, here's a plot point. You don't need that anymore.
Yes, yeah.
Or, oh, here's a character. Well, don't need them anymore either.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, here's a character that I littered towards the end of the series to introduce them, but they're just gonna lay there because we don't want to actually start anything. And then my biggest problem with the story, and I'm sure we'll get to this eventually, and maybe we could even transition here, is that it doesn't have an ending either.
Mm-hmm.
It has a very jarring cutoff.
Yep.
Most likely because there will be a season 2, I'm assuming. But the problem is that even if there is going to be a season 2, there is ways, and there are many anime that have done this when there's a season 2 coming, that they find a good cutoff point that isn't, oh, so this is a thing by.
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the biggest bad tastes in my mouth that I've had in anime in a long time.
If you were to right now tell me, out of like the typical elements that we tend to express, so like production, story, characters, for you, was story probably the weakest element in this show, and what kind of took you out of it the most?
Yeah. Like, it's and that sucks, because on my tier list, it's probably the thing that I tend to prioritize the most.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, and we'll get to this later after we get everybody's thoughts on story as well, but the characters were good. Some of them definitely very good.
Yeah.
But the world that was being built around them was never cohesive. It was never something that I could grab onto and understand. And there's a lot of people who said, Cassie, it's just being subtle. They're just giving you little pieces of information. And, oh, maybe you just don't enjoy that. And I'm sitting over here like, motherfucker, Flip Floppers was one of my favorite animes of the last couple of years, and they don't tell you shit.
Yeah.
Like, I can deal with a world that doesn't make sense, but at least give me enough to grasp onto that I can fill in those blanks myself, which arguably I feel that Flip Floppers did.
Mm-hmm.
It gave you just enough that you could think enough and know what was going on. I have no clue what's going on here.
So in Flip Flapper's case, it had more of a understandable through line, and rules and constructs of the world made more sense. And you enjoyed the characters a little bit more than Land of Lustrous's cast.
And I chose that as a comparison because I would argue Flip Flappers doesn't have a through line for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Was that episodic?
It was mostly episodic, and then had a payoff at the end, and it sewed in a little bit of a story that concluded itself very, in my opinion, really well. The problem is we're not talking about Flip Flappers. I just used it as a comparison piece because I get kind of frustrated when people tell me, oh, maybe you just don't like it when people give you a little bit of information. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
I don't like when people give me information and then throw it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. I also just think that they're doing subtlety in a world that is so densely packed with like constricted information. I mean, and it's so foreign. And so it's like I can't even like grasp that, because I know that there's so much here that they're like throwing at us that is like completely foreign that I have to adapt to. So like I can't even just like ground myself to grasp like the details, like you're saying, and subtlety. But John, I actually want to know what you thought of the story, especially considering from what you told me that after watching the anime you sought out the manga, correct?
That is correct, and I am actually currently caught up on what has been translated of the manga available on Bookwalker at this current point.
Hashtag not an ad.
Yes.
And while I did enjoy the story, I will also agree that there are problems with the story. There are some things that were cut out of the manga, but I'm not sure how much that would have helped overall, or would have, because it's mostly stuff towards the end that got cut, and involves some new characters that therefore didn't make it to the series, and there's therefore another character to bring info in.
So tell me.
So I'm not sure if that would have ended up frustrating Cassie even more or not.
So can you tell me this? Is the presentation of the storytelling like verbatim to the way the anime did it? Or do you notice differences?
It is pretty close. Maybe some of it comes down to translation, like differences in translation. But I don't think it was super different between the anime and manga. It's just every so often there was like, oh, this little bit was cut out of here. There were some extras at the end of the volumes that most of them were cut. One of the lots of extras was actually made into extra content for a couple of the episodes, because, or was it just the one episode? But that was because that whole section was actually really short in the manga, that they decided to pad it out.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me think then. So for me, just like Cassie said, for me, I do think that story was the biggest detriment for me. Craig and John, would you say that you found story to be weakest, or did you find it to maybe be a stronger element that made you like the show?
I will be the first to admit that while I did binge this show and really liked it, it definitely has problems in the sense where it does meander. It definitely, as Cass put it, presents you with a nice steak, but it's only so far away from you and you can't get to the steak. It'll dangle the carrot in front of your face, and with this plot line with certain characters or certain events, and then it'll just hard stop. Now, while that was cool, it was also, and it did bring about like, oh, the nature and the state of the world. What are the lustrous, these gems, and who is, like, what's this academy on this island, and like the growing mystery of the Lunarians. Like, it never had any payoff for me, but I kind of was just more into, yo, this is Foss's journey, and she's kind of like a self-insert stubborn, they're a stubborn kind of like gem that's like, okay, I gotta do this encyclopedia, I guess. I want to do more, but I'm whiny about it, and I kind of wanted to see what would happen to them over the course of 12 episodes.
Yeah.
So I was more invested in the characters more than the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, being watching it more for the characters than the overarching story, because while there kind of is an overarching story, it's mostly to do with Foss's character arc and how that plays out more than oh, we have this one particular goal, because as it currently is, there's no real goal beyond we are constantly being attacked by these Lunarians, and we are trying to not so much survive, but not get taken away, because they don't technically die.
So that sounds like a good old time for us to roll on into characters.
Hacha!
Yeah.
Yes!
And-
Yes, Queen!
I would like to start by bringing the table out, asking each of you Craig's famous question for our character section, and mentioning maybe who your favorite character is. If there's a couple that you want to mention as honorary shoutouts, as this is a huge cast of characters, feel free. I'm just gonna say, Craig, you need to keep talking. Who was your favorite character?
Okay, basically, while if we do a spoiler section for the show, we may get into it a little bit more, but I liked Phospholite, again, despite being childish and kind of thick-headed, despite being brutal AF, and you blow on them and they break, essentially. I found their character arc over the 12 episodes to be awesome. Shoutouts to my character in the Discord chat, Bort. Bort had their shit on lockdown. They're the most powerful gem in the most dense next to Daya, and had a sense of, how they can use the sword and fight the Lunarians and essentially not get captured. So,
Nice.
those are my two.
Okay, and then Cassie, what about you?
Bouncing off of Craig, I really loved Daya or Diamond's interactions with Bort.
Mhm.
If I could just have an entire spin-off series just dedicated to them kicking ass together and just going through their daily lives on wherever the fuck this planet is. I think it's implied that it's somewhere around Earth or I don't know. Whatever. Wherever they are.
It's Earth super far in the future.
I would love to just see them running around and having their misadventures, or I don't know, a spin-off of Bort teaching people how to fight the anime with her supportive
Aww.
or their supportive significant other rock Daya.
Yes!
That'd be great.
Yes.
I apologize. I know we're trying to use they pronouns. Forgive me. Anyway, so
It's all good.
I would love that. I loved Daya a lot. I thought she brought a lot of happiness and charm to the cast when things were getting dark on the more darker side. I also think that out of everybody in the cast, she accepted Foss for who they were,
Mhm.
or they accepted Foss for who they were
Yes.
long before anybody else did. And I think that that's very important. I do want to give a shout out to a character that I might talk about in the spoiler section, Antarcticite. Antarcticite was actually voiced by one of my favorite voice actresses, who also voices Killua from Hunter x Hunter.
Ooh.
And it took me a couple of minutes to realize who it was, and I think Craig pointed it out. And I was,
man, nah,
or
that was
Zach, somebody,
Yep.
Somebody pointed it out, and I was like, I knew it.
Yeah.
And I was very
Zach.
excited. I was very excited about it, and then that character actually ended up growing on me and ended up being honestly one of the characters with the most clear of intentions in the show.
Yes.
And I think that that's very important as well. I think that really shined for their character, but I can't obviously talk about that without spoiling. So those are my two characters I'd like to shout out.
Nice. What about you, John?
I currently have Fuss as my icon in the Discord chat. Again, I really did latch onto their overarching story. And their relationship with all the other characters, and how they grew and changed as the story progressed. And there's a moment in the last episode, I don't want to go too much into spoiler, but they kind of have this loop around that happens in the very last episode, and I really love that moment because it just helped highlight just like how far this character has gone.
I love moments like that where you have a stark contrast. Not going to say more on it, but it is.
Oh,
love that
now I know what.
storytelling.
Now I catch your drift. Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
But unfortunately, there's also the final episode does leave off in a way saying that there's more for this character to come, and they still have a lot more to do to grow further. And that's where the last episode leaves off. But I also want to give a shout out to Cinnabar.
Nice. I was wondering.
The fact that the quote unquote poison that secretes from Cinnabar is actually mercury.
Yep.
And it's because Cinnabar is the raw material that you get mercury from, which is like, everyone, all of the gems in that, all the Lustrous are based on real life gems, and their properties do get reflected on in their personalities and various different traits that they have. Like, Bort is a black diamond and is very tough, but very tough and like not brittle. Whereas a diamond like Daya can shear if it's hitting the right direction, or something like that. But they do reflect those differences in the characters themselves, and Cinema just left me really intrigued to find out more about them. And so I really enjoyed Foss's and Cinnabar's interactions with each other as well. So yeah.
Nice. Just because it did come up in brief conversation, I will say that for a lot of people, and if this is something that would interest you, I know that the show, for having the very strong characters and having them be identified as genderless, this is a show that I've seen a lot of anime feminist watchers be very appreciative of. So if that is
nice.
something that you would appreciate, definitely give this show a chance. It honors its characters very well, and yeah, I've heard really good feedback. So that is something that's very cool about the show and helps it stand out.
I just want to quickly throw out on that line of thought. The characters actually tend to refer to each other in slightly more masculine ways as well, though. But
Nice.
but such pronouns in Japan tend to be a bit more loose fit
Yeah.
than concrete. Oh, this is for boys and this is for girls. You will hear girls referred to as kun in Japan, which tends to be more thought of more of a masculine way, but can be used for girls.
Right. Yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah, cool factoid to know about. So for me, I feel like for the most part, everybody brought up a lot of the key members in the main cast, almost all of them. And I'm glad that Cassie mentioned Daya, because out of the main cast, Daya was absolutely my favorite. I think I found her motives the most like relatable and compelling to me. And they did a good job like throughout the show to show the growth of that, just like they did with Fos. Daya kind of also has her own, or has their own arc on the side. But the other characters that I really enjoyed were honestly a lot of the side characters that I wish I got more of. So my Discord icon right now,
Yeah.
which is by our tradition, is Amethyst, which is kind of a spoiler. But Amethyst is great, and Amethyst bonks their head all the time, and I really appreciated them the entire time that they're on screen.
I liked them a lot too. I also liked how badass they were.
Yes. Oh no. The highest emotional peak I had in this show is when something involving them, a scene involving them,
I feel ya.
like made me emote. And I didn't do a whole ton of like very, a lot of emoting with this show, but I was feeling something.
Right there with you. I was like, whoa.
Yep. So shout outs to them. I adore them. I would also like them to have a mini series. As well, just some quick ones. Red Barrel, I also really liked. Red Barrel was the fashionista that ended up like wanting to style people's hair and like made nightgowns for them at one point.
Yeah, I remember her.
Yeah, Red Barrel.
How dare you get taller without my permission?
Yeah, I really liked Red Barrel. They were super cute and like cheerful, and I really liked them. And then finally, Alex, I want to say it's Alexandrite, who was voiced by Rie Kujima, and she they were like super obsessed with the Lunarians, like the Lunarian otaku.
Oh gosh, she was so fun.
Yeah.
I liked one of her scenes close to the end. It was pretty fun.
Yes. I loved all of them. And I think it is good to say that this show does a good job with having interesting enough like lead cast, but also your little side cast. There were plenty of characters that I was intrigued with enough to be like, oh, I want to know more about them. So good on the show for that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single character in this series that is dislikable. And everyone is...
Spoiler room?
Well, in my personal opinion, I don't think there's anyone super dislikable.
I mean...
that reaction says that my co-hosts don't quite share the same opinion.
I'll save my point for a actual general conversation about characters, but continue, John.
I also want to give a shout out to one character that doesn't appear in the fucking anime. They get cut from the cast for again. This is like the chapter that is right towards the end, and therefore cuts off something to do with Foss's development. But Ghost Quartz.
Ooh, that sounds spoopy.
Spoop.
They are actually a single character that has 2 gems. There's a gem living inside of the outer gem.
Like a fusion. Nope. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not
Um,
gonna make these comparisons. Not in this review.
Oh, the crystal gems.
I think the implication is like there's a not exactly split personality disorder, but like there's this second gem has its own personality that sometimes comes through, or like sometimes like whispers to the. It's hard to express how it works.
I see.
Without actually seeing it.
I see. So Cassie, you mentioned you were gonna say another general thing about characters, right?
Well, yeah, because we've been talking about the things that are our favorite, like who our favorite characters were, but I do want to say generally about characters. I will say that because the story is so lackluster, the characters have to carry it, and I believe that for the most part they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like even if I didn't have to watch this show for the podcast, I still would have finished it. Because there are so many characters that I was invested in. My biggest problem is that I was more invested in the side characters than I was the main character of the story, and that kind of defeats the point of the anime entirely. I didn't like False.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I continued to not like False through most of the show. Who knows, maybe a season 2 will come out and I'll like, False better. But the problem is that if you don't like False, I think that you're going to have a hard time with this anime because, like was described earlier, most of the story, what little there is of one, is a big character arc for False.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, even though you do have these, no pun intended, sparkling personalities on the side, It kind of feels sad sometimes because I wanted more Daya. I wanted more Amethyst.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted more of characters that showed up at the end just to apparently be there and go back to sleep. Small spoiler. It's just there's so many things that I wanted, but I couldn't have because I had to focus on this character I didn't even care about. And that was frustrating.
Yeah, I can get that.
But I would say in general that the characters are actually very good. If anything, I just felt a little disappointed that even some characters that were built up, such as Cinnabar, which we can get more into in the spoiler review, I suppose, were introduced, and this is also, again, a part of the story that was introduced and then thrown away, was her very importance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's... I can't be the only one who was slightly frustrated by that. But
No, it's...
for me, it's like... Yeah. So, long story short, and everybody can talk after that, I promise. I won't rant.
Okay.
But I think the characters are probably the best part of this, and it still irritated me.
Yeah, I do think I also had similar frustrations with the Cinnabar. Just that they present Cinnabar as like it's just very, very, very important. Like the primary other character that we are going to be surrounded by just as much as foes, and then we don't see them. And basically the way that they paced encountering Cinnabar was like so few and far between that I never could really grasp who Cinnabar was, what Cinnabar wanted, how Cinnabar felt. So that was frustrating because the anime is like, hey, this is a compelling and strong relationship, and I'm like, I don't really see it.
Yep, I agree 100%. Where I was like, yo, folks, if you want to get her a different job than being Night Watch, that's cool. I get because you're so motivated and trying to do anything besides create this book. Okay, I guess you could be like hang out with her like for a couple episodes or something, become friends, like talk to the fucking master, like, and see what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't show up, Foss doesn't talk to Cinnabar for maybe 1 or 2 episodes in the entire show, and you're like, and every time they're like, they got the sense where they're like the best of friends, or they're like clandestine to be gem friends forever, and I'm like, dog, I think their False is closer to like Jadeite, Bort, and Daya than you, but okay. I like your power set. Again, going back to what John said about the Mercury, but
I think it's also kind of frustrating because when she does seem to have importance again, and again, something we can elaborate in more in the spoiler room, but when she does seem to have importance, it's where the show is cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like right at the, yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, remember how important this person was? To be continued.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on characters, or should we dive into some of the real bread and butter of this show, which is for me, the production is just like, I think for me, if story was my weakest element, production for me was probably the biggest thing that I enjoyed and about this show. It is gorgeous. Just
yes.
You think you're wanting a season 2, and if it ever does get announced, it's not gonna be for probably 4 years, because that CG is on point. It is choreographed well and beautiful looking.
At least they'd have more of an excuse than Attack on Titan.
This is also very true. I don't know what Studio Wit was doing
Yes.
for those 4 or 5 years.
At least they have the character models, but then all that, oh yeah, they also change outfits for the characters quite often, so they'd have to, like, not necessarily completely remake the character models, but yeah, they do have to adjust them quite often, because Red Barrel does like creating new outfits for everyone.
That, and again, going down to the way the choreography and the fight scenes are so dynamically shot with, like, dynamic camera angles and everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that the studio also had a hand in the CG dance scenes from the Love Live animes.
Oh, nice.
I did not know that.
And yeah, them being able to go like, okay, choreography for fight scenes, and just they made the fights in this look visually interesting and spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, just even on just an artwork perspective, like the things in the world, the characters, everything had a very distinct design, like an art design. You know, there was no real sense to me of like the very like blasé basic character designs or like similar face syndrome. Like even just some of the facial features on the Lustrous were all like pretty distinct, and I appreciated that a lot. I appreciate how incredibly gorgeous Daya is. Like, holy crap, that prismatic hair. I just
Yeah, the fact that anytime she enters the room, it's just suddenly, okay, you know those white walls? Rainbows.
And the lighting detail, that's another huge thing. If they're going in on this commitment to CG and gems, like understanding the way that these elements are going to look in a 3D space. So consistency with like lighting and motion there, just really good.
This is a series I think is better off being CG because of the elements of the characters and stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of dedicating to CG and these being gems, and gems that can break, some of the most beautiful scenes in this show are when things are shattering.
Yes.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's okay, they can be glued back together.
Well, no, I'm just saying the way that they did it is just like
I know.
so good. And honestly, like I'm somebody who is very picky about CG.
Yeah.
I'm honestly over picky about CG. Like, if there's CG in something sometimes, it'll just ruin the entire thing for me. Like, for example, I was so freaking intrigued by Golden Kamui, but I will never be able to actually continue watching it past episode 1 because I was so annoyed with the CG. Just as an example. But with this show, the CG is done so well, even I'm just like, well, I want to be a critic, but I can't.
Yeah. And then we can continue in on art, but also maybe think about our thoughts on sound as well, because I also think that was a good aspect of the show. Like the soundtrack was very unique. I always think back, for me personally, about the song that plays when the Lunarians attack. It makes me so unsettled. like really
chimes.
uncomfortable. I don't like it, but
Yeah.
like it's so effective for what it is trying to do. Like, you know, as a mood piece, to set that.
Yeah,
So
like,
props.
you've got these like ethereal creatures just suddenly appearing, and then you've just got these almost haunting bell
Bells.
chime kind of soundtrack going on in the background, and it all just helps sell it. Of like, this is an uncomfortable situation for these characters to be in. We're gonna make you like somewhat uncomfortable while you still enjoy the praise.
Did anyone have like a scene that maybe like where they found the production to really be top tier and accent what was happening?
I think one of the scenes that I was most impacted by is when a certain gem, I'm not going to say who, just for the sake of spoilers, but they shatter. But it's like this very awkward moment of silence.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just this oh fuck moment. And you can really feel the raw emotion there. And it's one of the few times where I actually felt something for Foss as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for a character that I didn't care a whole lot about, I was like, oh my god, they have to be feeling terrible. And the other character that's shattering is just like in the process of doing so, like the animation of them shattering, them moving their hand, this pure silence and awe, like kind of horror of the moment is just so good.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite moment in the entire show.
Yeah.
A moment that stood out for me was when a gem was incapacitated, or rather, like, got busted up, banged up, and had to hide from a Lunarian. The way that the camera angle is shot,
yes.
and they are hiding the entire time from this giant burly beast, and prior to that, they were fighting, and that's how said gem got busted up. So it's like, good job production, good job to those camera angles. Goddamn,
the camera movement in that scene was great. Yeah, really helped sell like this is a terrifying situation.
The tension,
Yep. The tension, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of examples, so I want to see if Cammy brings up one of them.
So mine is really basic, and this is one that everybody I recommend. Go on YouTube and just search Daya running. Just find
That's
it from
one of
episode
them.
3.
That's the one that was.
That.
I like that.
That will give you just a quick glimpse into like honestly what you're in for, what kind of beautiful visual treat you are in for if you decide to watch this show. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of them that instantly came to mind for me, but I was like, I'll see, I've got some other examples.
Thanks,
so,
I appreciate you.
I'll see if anyone would bring that one up. Mine are actually a lot more subtle moments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I already mentioned the mouths that I really appreciated, but like, there's actually a moment where Daya's sock gets pulled down, and she has to readjust it. And I think that bit was actually hand drawn, but I thought it was really pretty.
Nice.
But there's also a moment where a certain character melts, and that entire sequence I thought was incredibly well done. And then they sort of showed them being reformed, and like how they went like while they like showed them being put together, they had like the character, like I suppose to symbolize the characters like coming back. They showed it going from this like melted form back into the more solid form again.
I think I know what you mean.
And like those two sequences, like between each other, I really, I thought they were really well done, and I really liked them.
Nice. Nice.
Also, the opening. I just want to throw the opening out there.
So good.
That is honestly probably one of the best openings of the last couple of years. It still stands up really, really well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The song and the animation in it.
Yep.
But
I
like
love
it's
the
just
song.
it's the closest thing to a perfect opening I've ever seen. It's so good.
Yeah, in contrast to like what I think we all kind of have been feeling about the My Hero opening, where it's like the visuals and the audio don't really like synchronize. This is
Yeah,
just
like the current My Hero opening, like good song, good openings. They just don't mesh somehow.
yeah. But like this one.
Whereas this one, yes,
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah, credit to that. Was there any other aspects of production you guys would like to touch upon?
The only other thing that I want to
Mhm.
say is that in regards to sound direction, it was also really good. In the scene that I said that stuck out to me the most, I really like how they utilized the sound of glass breaking and silence.
Mhm.
And I think
Yes.
that in addition to us talking about the beautiful OSTs and talking about the beautiful animation, the actual sound direction in this show was so good. Like, there were no like Fade Apocrypha burns
Laser
going on in this
horns.
show. And I really appreciated that. I think that I feel that in regards to everything else in this show, the production stands out the most. And honestly, is probably the highlight of the entire show for me, and probably what carried me to the end, since I did have such problems with the story and was not completely sold on all of the characters. I think the production was just that
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
the production is solid, and I just want to throw. I love the sound effect that they used for the swords slash sound effect.
Mhm.
It's not the typical sound you would expect to hear from a sword, but then the swords that they're using are not actually metal.
Mhm.
The swords that they are using are actually obsidian, I believe, made by the gem obsidian. The gem that's the swordsmith for the other Lustrous rather is obsidian, but she seems to actually use obsidian to make the blades, because you've got these black straight edge swords, or for most part straight edge.
Nice.
And there are some scenes where characters are using the swords, and you see the swords being used to breaking point, and you see the sword blade crack and shatter as well. And again, such good production.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with Cassie. I think it's definitely the highlight of the show. What about you, Craig? Just like a final note on production, maybe?
Just basically, yeah, the way that it's choreographed, the way that it sounds, the camera angles are shot very well. Again, if it's green lit for season 2, which I don't believe it is, and if it does, it's not gonna happen for quite some time. Opening is baller. Admittedly, outside of whenever the Lunarians attacked, I can't think of any musical score that comes to mind. But yeah, it was pretty damn, pun intended, rock solid.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Good.
Pete would be
10 out of
proud.
10. I hope he's listening to us right now to be just as disgusted with us as we are with him.
It's true.
All right. So from there, I think we are good to roll on into ratings. John, you can go last because if I do recall, you are the one that passed this show.
Indeed.
Let's see. I'm going to throw a random dart. I am closing my eyes and imagining it, and it lands on Cassie.
Me?
Yeah.
Crap. Okay. I don't know if I'm ready, coach. So I liked that I watched this in a group. I think that really helped me out a lot because I was watching it with people who really appreciated it. And even if I didn't agree with everybody's views, I think that the conversations that I had afterwards, like no matter how salty I sounded earlier on or jokingly cursing out people I think that that this show, if anything, brings a lot of conversation to the table. Whether you agree with that conversation or not is completely fine because that discourse is happening and it seems to be, for the most part, very civil, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like that this show is something that we can all give ideas on, whether we liked it, certain aspects or not, and the things that we didn't like, people can say, oh, I see why that is, or if you did really like something, somebody could say, I see why that is. And I think that that's a great showing of just how cohesive the things to like and not like about this show really are. And what it comes down to is what you value the most in watching anime, really. What you want most from this medium. And for that, I think Houseki no Kuni's great, or Land of the Lustrous is great. My biggest problem is that story and characters are something that I go into a show for. And if you don't have one, you have to have the other, or I will not be invested. No matter how beautiful your animation is, no matter how good your soundtrack is, characters and story are always going to be utmost the most important thing to me. And for a seinen title, that's what I wanted. I don't believe I got that. There were some characters that did make it a better experience for me. It wasn't a bad experience. It was just not one that I feel that I would want to reapproach and reattempt anytime soon. I will say, if a season 2 came out, I would watch it hoping that it corrected the problems that I did have with the story. Nice. That it would give me more of what I want instead of what I got. I believe that it's a gorgeous show. I think that its production can carry you. And to be completely honest, when it became all about Fos, that's what it did. The show's just really good in that aspect, in delivering a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's going to either hit or miss with you. So for that reason, you definitely need to check it out. But I do give it a score of a like it. I don't think that I don't think it rubbed me so far bad that I didn't have an enjoyable experience. And if anything, I'm enjoying more of the conversations afterward than the show itself.
Interesting.
Nice.
And I think that I like the show because of that.
That's good to hear. Honestly, was when I could never really get your take on it, because whenever you talked about it, it always seemed like it was at best a check it in your mind. So for you to come out and say you liked it and you liked more of the conversations, what actually says volumes of the show.
But that's why I also prefaced it with, there is just so much that this show has to offer.
Yeah.
It just didn't give me what I wanted, but it gave so many other people things that I can see and go, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I can't look at this show and say, I didn't like the story, but the story is bad.
Yeah.
The story isn't bad. It's not told in a way that I perceive and like.
I can get that.
So, but I can't say it's a bad story, where there are things out there that I can look at and say objectively that this is terrible writing. I mean, granted, that's hard to do anyway, but you can still try. With this one, it's just, I think that it's an experience that I'm happy I had.
Nice.
Fair enough.
Hey.
All right, Gregory, what about you?
So, as I said at the beginning, I will repeat this. This is one of my favorite animes of 2017. Shoutouts to Zach from Save Our Progress that recommended me this show. He watched it weekly, and what I did was I binged it all within a single sitting at my family's home during the holidays. Yes, this world kind of just sprinkles on the world building, and it dangles that carrot in front of your face as you continue to run on the treadmill to see if you can get the answers to what the great pondering questions are. What is the answer to A, B, C, and X, Y, Z? What are their motivations? Unfortunately, we don't ever get that. But at the same time, I was in it to see what was the deal with Fos. And again, as Cass said and prefaced, if you're not a fan of Fos and their dilly-dallying, as it were, then you're not going to be in for a good time. However, I wasn't really sold on Fos until the back half of the show, where shit started getting real fast. It says something when I have an actual print-out set character on my wall behind me. So if you hadn't gathered by now, this is a pretty rock solid show. It's a like it. At one point I was fucking head over heels over the show, and I thought it was fucking baller, and I rated it an 8 on Kitsu. I still feel as though it is an 8, despite its flaws, but it was damn enjoyable and worth your time to at least give an episode or 2 at least. And if you can stand the meandering, then And if you can stand Foss in their character, then you are set.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I will go ahead and echo a lot of sentiments that most of you already said. Cassie, I love how you basically said that it gets to a point where it brings things up that are valuable that, like, even if you didn't receive that same effect, you can still see it and, like, understand that it's there. That's definitely where I am a bit at this show, where I'm kind of standing off to the sideline, looking at it and looking at people's perceptions of it, which is like there. And I came into this show where I had the bit of the same effect I had going into Madoka Magica, which was where I had heard nothing but super high praise about it. And so that always sets me on just a bit of an odd perspective. I'm not sure if I'm going to be wowed, or I don't believe necessarily if I can, like, be wowed by something like this. In Madoka Magica's case, there was emotionally a lot of things that did resonate and pull me in, that gives that show a bit more staying power. Land of the Lustrous, objectively, I can look at and really be like, I can see the value here for other people, but for me personally, there's not a lot of staying power. I think, the only time I've really gone back to think about this show has been to watch the opening. And even
Yeah.
the prospect of, like, rewatching it, I'm like, I feel like that'd kind of be a slog, just, like, for me personally. And as Cassie mentioned again, I think it's that where I find a lot of staying power is in characters and in story. And they both just fell a little flat for me personally. So I'm at a point with the show where it's like, objectively, I would give it a like it, or I'd give it a bit more of a high score. But personally, I would recommend for people to check it out, because I do think it's worth seeing.
Yeah.
Sticking with it, I think that is dependent on a person's taste. But it's a very, again, rock solid. It's a very rock solid check it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right, John.
All right. So over to me. Yeah, this series isn't perfect. If you do not like the character of Foss, you probably are going to struggle with it, even if there are other. While the rest of the cast, I feel, is pretty likable, some of them just aren't around enough to really carry it if you don't enjoy Foss as a character.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I do enjoy Foss as a character, and therefore I was able to not only watch this all the way through, I was able to watch it all the way through multiple times.
Hey.
And have bought the manga. And then with the production, like, on multiple watch throughs, I can pick up things that I didn't notice before, like some of the more subtle things, like noticing how the mouths were animated, and various other more subtle details, and picking up on things that I like that were nods to things to come, or like remembering the having that whole, like, going back to the start after seeing the end, and, like, therefore seeing how it's playing out and stuff like that. For me personally, it's a love it.
Nice.
I did really, really enjoy this series.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also again see how it's not going to be quiet for absolutely everyone. So objectively, yeah, I like it. It's probably what it deserves, but personally, I love it. So
That's good, though.
That's what we're asking.
Yeah, it's important to address shows that and really, like, give shows love that personally resonate with you for whatever reasons that may be. So I'm happy you're waving that love it flag proud. Actually, okay, I'm really bad at calculating math averages, but
I think overall it comes out as a like it.
yeah,
Maybe
probably.
Like it, a love it,
Yeah,
and a check it.
maybe
so.
like
Yeah.
maybe like a like it minus, or just a like it, one of those two.
Yeah, something like that. I'd give it a B minus. It's real pretty.
Yeah.
They, like, on the test paper, whoever took the test drew a lot of really pretty roses and paper, like, little pieces of, like, paper mache, and made a little sculpture on top of their test, and made it look all pretty and nice, and the teacher was like, well, I gotta give them extra credit. I mean...
There it is. There it is.
That's Land of the Lustrous for me. Because, like, for as much as I bitched about this show, I gave it a relatively high score objectively. I think I gave it, like, a 6.5 or something.
Nice.
Like, even though I whined about it forever, I gave it, like, a 6.5.
Nice.
Well, to be fair, a certain character sold you on the show.
I mean, they didn't sell me on the whole show, let's be honest.
Yeah. You brought up the prospect of, would you rewatch the show? And I'm like, I thought to myself, I'm like, would I rewatch the show? And I thought to myself, no, but I would rewatch certain episodes. Despite the fact that it ends on such a cliffhanger-ass ending, I would watch certain episodes.
Nice.
Not all episodes, but certain.
Before we go and potentially go into a little bit of a spoiler room, because it is getting late, we can drop out some recommendations. Again, this is something that we've been trying to start in the past few episodes, of just each of us thinking about maybe a show that we'd recommend based on if you enjoyed what you saw in Land of the Lustrous. I will just start us off and say that this show, while I was watching it, always reminded me of a show called Shinsekai Yori, or From the New World. For a couple of reasons. It takes place in a weird, like, kind of post-apocalyptic-y future, like, way beyond kind of what humanity is like now. Very similar, like, new setting that you have to get used to. Humans aren't, I mean, they're still humans, but they're, like, modified, so they have some powers that they have to understand, and there's a lot about the main character starting off with a lot of apathy and, like, growing through the world. It's got the same sort of sci-fi and confusion and really nice production. It's just hand animated, but, like, I highly suggest, if you liked Land of the Lustrous, give Shinsekai Yori a try. I will also say that Shinsekai Yori is based on a finished book series, so also it has a complete ending.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
I'll give a shout out here, a recommendation. Not the same genre, not the same subject and material, not a character piece. I want to give a shout out to Majestic Prince. Have I watched all Majestic Prince? No. But I've seen the fight scenes in that. CG fight scenes. Good CG fight scenes for robots. They did them good.
Nice.
So, there you go. Good.
So another example of good CG.
Yes.
I guess I can go next. So I kind of struggled with this one because Land of the Lustrous is just so very different. To recommend something similar is a little hard. But I do want to recommend a show that I think kind of gets overshadowed and isn't talked about a lot, and that's Nagi no Asukara.
Ooh, nice.
I love it.
And I think that it would be good because it's also about a group of people who are not human, or are kind of human, but they live underwater in a completely different location, and their interactions with people who live on the surface, and how that actually goes back and forth, because there is that bit of hatred of not understanding other people's motivations. And it also has a lot of things that I really like that were not in Land of the Lustrous, like a coherent plot and good world building. And I think that if you liked Houseki no Kuni, you might like this one too, in regards to at least the difference between two different kinds of people or organisms having a conflict.
Very good pick. I hadn't even thought about that.
The one that I picked, and this was just like, I don't know, in all honesty, trying to put a finger on exactly what made this particular series come to mind for me is kind of hard. Maybe it's just sort of a weird feel of a mysterious world that you're trying to figure out. I would recommend Kino no Tabi, or Kino's Journey. It's just something about Kino traveling around and going place to place, finding. Although, admittedly, it's complete opposite of Land of the Lustrous, whereas Land of the Lustrous is a large cast in a single, relatively small area. Kino's Journey is actually mostly just two characters traveling place to place to place and exploring the entire world.
Yeah, I could see that.
I really like that. Also, you're recommending the original, correct? Not the...
The original, because I still haven't watched anything beyond the first 3 episodes of the
remake or
remake.
continuation, whichever. Okay, so yeah, add those to your list if you're looking for things that are similar. And then from there, I think we're gonna take a step over to our comfy chairs and go into the spoiler room. So for those of you that aren't sticking around, thanks so much for joining us for episode 65 of the Annie Chat Box. We will see you a little later.
Bye-bye, oyasumi!
Peace.
Bye.
All right, I think
Okay.
they're all gone.
Get the fuck out of here.
So if anyone has a plot point they would like to bring up, I just want to say this because I want to hear Cassie get real sad. But Antarcticite, man.
If there was ever a moment where I was both really intrigued, really impressed, and really disappointed, it was that moment. Because it's just like, oh my god, this is so well done. I actually feel something outside of the twins being in trouble.
Yes.
Oh my god, I actually give a shit. I give a shit about Foss. I actually care. But at the same time, I'm like, oh man, I really liked this character, and I actually gave a shit about this show for 5 minutes. Please. Please. Please.
They
Please.
put a lot of effort into Antarcticite's character. I mean, she's only in there for what, 2 episodes?
Yeah, they're only around, and they give a good excuse for why they're only around for those couple episodes, because it's their job to
It's their role
come out
during winter.
Yeah, it's their role during winter, because otherwise they're in like a liquid state. But they turn into a solid state to, go while everybody else is sleeping. They do this job, and I think that the friendship that bonded between Foss and Antarcticite actually led to me at least being minorly convinced about Foss's development after they're gone.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like Foss had a super huge connection to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I feel like Foss's connection to Antarcticite was actually genuine. And they saw each other for their faults, and the way they kind of try to pick up Antarcticite, or Foss tries to pick up Antarcticite's mantle after that, is very cool and interesting. However, I do think that transition from clumsy idiot who can't seem to have any actual real character development and realize they're being stupid to badass, completely cold,
I'm dead on the inside.
I'm dead on the inside Foss was way too jarring for me.
Yeah.
But I can at least, kind of understand it because Antarcticite was just so well done.
Yeah. There was no episode to kind of show the traumatic aftermath during winter. It was just like, oh, now it's spring now. Oh, by the way, Foss has her shit together and she's got gold arms, bitch! And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
That's kind of also how it was in the manga, unfortunately, after the scene
winter
where
stuff.
Antarcticite got captured, it did cut to spring when everyone's waking up.
Well, here's the thing. Cuts in manga and cuts in stories are way different than cuts in anime. And here's another thing. The way that it was shown in the anime did not indicate to me that there was any passage of time until it was told to me, oh, hey. Because they even started the next episode after they were, shattered and taken by the moon people or Lunarians, where it's like, oh, this is the aftermath. And then there's, just a sudden flash forward. It's like there's no indication that time has passed. And then the only way we see that, Foss had any regrets was the, nightmares
PTSD.
that they have and the PTSD. And even that I felt was not as well done as it could have been.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, one of my main reasons why I couldn't really gel with Foss's development is that a lot of they would show the impact of what immediately happened, but all of Foss, internalizing and dealing with that is shown off screen. So, to me,
Yeah.
I couldn't... So that's kind of, for me, why it wasn't compelling. We didn't sit enough with Foss kind of absorbing the things that they were dealing with and what they were seeing.
And I think that would have actually made the anime more enjoyable for me. Because if there was any moment that I was invested, it was right there. And then I just got kind of mildly disappointed. Well, actually, no. I got very disappointed. Because they basically... I know they're not technically dead, but for all intents and purposes, they killed off a character I was feeling really good about. And kudos to them for leaving that impact, but then that impact felt stale.
And let's not forget, though, insult to injury by the fact that they never explain what the Lunarians are or what they do with the gems.
Nope. They give you a small itty-bitty implication with the jellyfish lady thing in, like, episode 3 or 4, and then it's never talked about again.
It's essentially like, what is it? Like, the gems are like fucking the humanity's remains, the husk, and then, like, the Lunarians are the soul or some bullshit, and that's the whole explanation.
But it might be all one big metaphor, nobody knows. Like, it's terribly, like, implicated. And then, like, they show that, I did like that they showed that, like, the gems are born on kind of, like, the beach, kind of, like, that area. Like, that's where, like, some of them, like, either fail to form or completely form.
Yep.
And I thought that was a cool little world building trip, especially because that's where Foss gets gets their additional parts.
Yeah. Gold.
But other than that, it's like, I don't know who the Lunarians are. I don't even fucking know who their sensei is anymore. Thanks, cutoff ending.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Like, I sensed something was up with that guy because all the Lunarians wanted to just, like, mosh him. And when the dog came up to him, he's like, oh, you're so fluffy.
But the dog didn't attack him.
No, because he's a Lunarian!
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, the Lunarians never actually attacked the sensei. They always attacked, the Lustrous. But then, why is the sensei on Earth with them, like, helping them grow and shit if he's a Lunarian himself? I don't know. Nobody knows. Is he even a Lunarian? I don't fucking know. What's a Lunarian? Don't know that fucking either.
I appreciate that at the end, Fos is kind of like, hey, I don't know if we should, like, trust everything that Sensei tells us. I appreciate that is where it's going. Again, I think, as Cassie said, like, that might, if they get a season 2 and they kind of delve some more in on that, I think that would be good. Because, like, I'm kind of with you, Craig. I did not fucking trust Sensei. I was like, he's just taking advantage of these, like, lustrous gems, man, and they're all in love with him, and he's like being vague and shit.
I mean, like, he never seemed like he was, like, had malicious intent or anything. He's just so coy, and, like, even the bits during winter where he's just like, oh, I'm sleepwalking and I run into a wall and I literally break a wall. I'm like, oh, Buddhist monk guy, you're silly.
Yeah.
You silly. I love when Jade tried to wake him up. Just want to throw out to that scene.
Oh yeah, and broke her hand. Also, going back to Antarctica, their extra duties during winter of chucking cloths on everyone to put them back to sleep when they start sleepwalking. And also, those are actually OVA extras moments from the manga.
I love how Bort's like a sleepwalker or something, and it's just like fucking rampant.
Apparently she's quite they're quite terrifying when they're sleepwalking.
I don't mean to divert to this as well, but also, I didn't feel like there was much resolve with, like, Daya and Bort's, like, issues. Like, their relationship.
Did they have issues? I don't
They
recall.
did. There was a moment with Daya. Are you referring to, like, how when Daya got replaced as her partner and then she felt really, like, lackluster, and she had a lot, like, she always had a lot of, like, self-doubt issues.
Oh, okay.
And then there was the scene. I do think that there was this weird, like, understanding between them when Daya got shattered and Bort, like, came and rescued or tried to rescue Daya. But at the same time, I agree. There's this really weird conversation that never happened.
Yeah. Again, off screen.
Listen, off screen, they were gem friends. They knew as soon as one was in danger, they had to come to the rescue by jumping through a freaking window.
Yeah, Daya is great because she is one of the best representation of an emotional response in the entire fucking show.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like she, in a way, got more of a character arc than False did, and False was the fucking main character. Because you actually could understand what was going on with her, even if it was subtle.
Yeah.
But then you had, like, False for me, where a lot of the development was right in my face, but I was like, this isn't very believable to me.
Listen, you two didn't connect with one being told you have to do something, and then you just literally feel like you're dragging yourself through the snow and being like, I don't want to do this.
My biggest problem with False was that that they never learned until literally it cost somebody possibly their life. And I get that that's the point, but the thing is that point was already proven several times with, like, Amethyst.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Foss seemed to just fucking get over immediately.
Yeah. That was really
and
weird.
Just, there are several moments where it's like, Foss literally almost got somebody killed, or Foss did something really stupid and selfish, and never actually had any backlash for it. And I think that's why, when it got to the point that it was about Antarcticite, I was impacted at least a little, but I was just kind of tired of it by then.
Yeah, it did feel like they had to hammer it in multiple times. I get that.
And that was frustrating. It was just it wasn't very believable to me personally.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that you would say was taking a toll on False in the long term was like, oh, yo, you lost your arms and your legs, and with that, your memories. And by the way, let's bring back Cinnabar at the tail end of the show to remember, I made a promise with you. Oh, who are you again? And then you're like, oh, that's kind of fucked up.
Well, even that felt unimpactful, because Cinnabar never hung out with her.
No.
Or did anything. It was like, who are you? Yeah, same Foss. Who are you, Cinnabar? Like, I don't know. That whole dynamic was just very poorly represented and done. I don't know if it's better in the manga, but...
So, Cassie, I feel like you can relate to this, because this is kind of my general thing with Fos and not being a compelling character for me. So I know someone who really, actually I've heard a couple people say, they really love the voice actress of Fos, who also played a very similar character named Kumiko in Hibike Euphonium. And a lot of people that love Kumiko love Fos. And I know you and I both kind of didn't really get Kumiko or, like, relate to her.
But here's the thing, like, with at least Kumiko, at least I understood.
Fair.
Like,
yeah.
I didn't find her development particularly intriguing, and when there was development, it also was like it was being thrown at me and shoved down my throat.
Yeah.
And I hated it. And I feel like it's the exact same thing in Land of the Lustrous, but much worse, because they do it several times. They take your mouth, they pry it open with pliers. They hold open your mouth with, like, I don't know, those metal things that they have at the dentists. And they shove Fos's character development down your throat. And remember, Fos is a rock. So it hurts going down.
Nice.
For me, personally. But yeah, I never knew that, and that's actually a very good comparison, because I felt nothing for Kumiko either.
Well, yeah, and they both have a very similar sort of, like, apathy, and then, like you said, the development is just kind of haphazardly happening. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say, well, if we have a couple more bullet points, let's bring it up, but it is getting pretty late. So,
yep.
We will...
Anything on your end, John? Because I know it sounded like you were trying to talk a few times. Do you have any spoilers that you want to talk about, or anything that you want to mention that we've been ranting about?
No, I can't really think of even what I was trying to bring up at the time now. I think I was just trying to agree or bring up other points to do with what people were saying.
I have one more.
Sure.
And it's not it's not like anything to just have a conversation about it, or maybe we could, but, like, just, again, the point one of y'all made earlier in the episode where False has a moment where they see their shadow, their former self, looking at the water as they're just like, all right, my hair's on point, oh, I'm so cute, and False now dead on the inside, gold arms, metallic alloy, like, fucking speed-ass legs. She's like, wow, I took my life for granted. What a fool I was. And I'm like, damn!
Yeah, jealous of her, how she was previously, because she had no cares, and now she's got all the cares.
Which
All
is
day.
always cool to see, in my opinion, just to see, like, just how far you come in a story, like, despite the writing of it all, or, like, how you got there, it's still cool, in my opinion. I mean, yes, Cass, like you said, her transformation from clumsy, dumbass idiot who's thick-headed to, alright, guess we gotta do this job then. Time to change my hairstyle. Get a serious look on my face. Alright, I know how to use the sword.
I think that right now, the conversation that, like, me and you could have is a perfect representation of what I gave the rating of the show for, in that I understand why that moment is so cool, and I understand how it was perfectly implemented, and I understand that it was a great representation of what it was trying to do. But for me, I didn't get as much of an impact out of it because I didn't care for that character, and I felt that character development was shoddily written. That it just reminded me of how much shoddily written it was. Yeah, but it was a cool moment. Don't get me wrong, and I can look at it and know that people who did appreciate the character development and did appreciate Foss's character would be like, "Oh shit, this is so powerful." I get it. I just don't have the same feeling.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
To each their own, and as they say, everyone's got an opinion.
Yep. All right. So, okay, those of you that stuck around for the spoiler room, if you have more that you would like us to bring up or chat with us maybe in depth about your thoughts on Houseki no Kuni or Land of the Lustrous, feel free again to send us an email at anniechatmail@gmail.com. Talk about those sweet, sweet rock people. But for now, we are going to be signing off. So thanks so much for listening to episode 65, and we'll hear from you. We'll not hear from you. We'll talk to you again in the next one. All right, bye guys.
Oyasumi.
Alright.
Peace!